Hi, I'm Vespa. I'm the creator of TNR, a sketch, short film, YouTube video that if you're here, you've hopefully already seen. The sketch was created for Nightmind's Candy Bowl 2020, and it features the use of this mask, which I'm going to be showing you how to make today. Yeah, hope that you enjoy. Hope everything makes sense. I don't know what I'm saying. The impetus behind TNR is the fact that we have a lot of stray cats in our neighborhood, and I've had to talk to a local TNR program about those stray cats. TNR stands for Trap, Neuter, Release, so I thought it'd be really funny if basically there was a TNR program for monsters, for horrible monsters. I thought that would be very funny. So that's the purpose of the video. It looks very funny just sitting there like squash on my desk. To kind of take you through the creative process here, I started with a sketch. It was heavily inspired by Junji Ito's horror manga Uzumaki, which means spiral. And kind of the idea was, what if one of those spirals, instead of taking over someone's face, was someone's facial feature? Additionally, I took a lot of inspiration from this image from the Cryptic Research Club, I think it's called, which is a Twitter comic that a lot of Nightmind's viewers will be familiar with. Those two images kind of combined themselves in my head, and I ended up with the sketch that you see on the screen. I kind of felt that my sketch wasn't really getting across what I wanted, and I really needed to be able to see it in front of me. So I made this little model of its head, just so that I could see kind of how everything looked, and get a sense for what I was happy with, what I liked and didn't like, and what I wanted to change. I got some feedback from some friends and also from some of the folks on Nightmind's Discord. I ended up settling on some minor changes that made me much happier in the end overall. I then immediately jumped in and started sculpting, completely forgetting to turn on the camera. So the first 20 minutes, I forgot to record, but I'll talk you through it. Okay, so here we go. I've started with a sculpting mannequin, which is just a plastic head. I built out the chin so that it comes down a couple inches past the actual chin of the mannequin, and that's just using wire and tinfoil. I then started layering hot monster clay onto it. Monster clay is a remeltable clay that's very, very useful for sculpting masks, exactly like this. It's what you see in the crock pot there. It's very warm and soft and pliable, and a lot of it is very liquid, but it cools to the touch generally pretty quickly, so you can just kind of smack it down on top of it and mush it into place, and then as it cools, you can more precisely sculpt it and shape it and smooth it and stuff. What you saw me do a moment ago was try to widen the head a little bit because the sculpt was coming out just a little too narrow. So I put some clay down on the creature's right side of its head, and while that's cooling, so that I can go in and do that more carefully, I'm going in with tools and my hands and fine-tuning and smoothing the sculpt that I already have. I'm really trying to make sure that it's very smooth and very clean so that the latex will sit nicely on it and then later peel up from it nicely. Yes, that's a Sharpie. We use tools of all kinds here. Now that the clay on the monster's right side is cool, I can go back in safely and add some clay to its left side to try to widen that out too. At that point, I was completely out of any solid clay in the crock pot. Everything that was left was completely liquid, so the monster's a little bit asymmetrical. That's fine by me. I don't mind the monster being asymmetrical. Once the piece is as smooth and clean and nice as you want, Now it's time for petroleum jelly. Now the petroleum jelly is going to help the latex to come up more easily later. It's like greasing a pan. So you want to make sure that you get really, really good coverage. You want every little bit of the piece covered in petroleum jelly that you are planning on putting latex on. You also want to make sure that you're not leaving big glops of petroleum jelly anywhere, because you can lose a lot of detail if you do that. Ugh, my hands are covered in petroleum jelly now. Gross. Okay, and now that we've petroleum jellied, now it's time to latex. I like to pour a small amount of latex into a little cup so that I'm not wasting a bunch of latex if I leave it alone and the whole cup cures. I'm using small wedge makeup sponges because they are cheap and I am lazy and I don't want to waste a bunch of brushes or other kinds of sponges. Especially with this first layer, the latex is going to start pooling a lot on top of the petroleum jelly. So kind of what you want to do is go over it once, accept that it's going to pool, and then go back over that same section again with a little more and kind of disperse it and smooth it out a little bit as it begins to cure. You want to make sure that you get the entire sculpt covered in latex. That is vital. Every piece that you want to become part of the mask, it needs to be covered in latex very thoroughly. If you miss spots, you will have either weak spots or just holes in your mask. If that's what you're going for, then sure, but always make sure that your choices are intentional. I ultimately ended up with 8 layers of just latex, and then a couple layers of something else that we will get into once we get there. Layer 2. Three. 4. layer 5, layer 6, and layer 8. With layer 8, after we put down a coat of latex, we are also going in with tissue, torn bits of tissue. We're basically paper macheing the entire mask. This adds some structural stability to the mask and makes it so that we don't have to do, 15 layers of latex. Just makes things a little easier on us. It also gives a little bit of texture, which is good. As you may know from paper mache, you always want to tear any of the exposed edges before you put them down. You also want to make sure that you have wet latex down on the piece before you put the tissue down, and then you really, really, really want to saturate that tissue as soon as it goes down. You want to make sure the whole thing is soaked with latex. You want to be overlapping layers and just going in gently with that same dabbing motion that we've been using the whole time, and just make sure that you get complete coverage. In any areas where there's a lot of detail or small corners or anything like that, you want to use smaller pieces to make sure that you're getting every little bit. Ultimately, I ended up covering the entire mask with 1 to 2 layers of 2-ply tissue. Most of it is 1 layer, some of it is 2 where it's had to overlap. I let the whole thing cure, and I came back the next morning and realized that 3 a.m. Brain Vespa had forgotten to do the eyes and the inside of the mouth, like a genius. So I spent that morning paper macheing the eyes and the mouth with especially small pieces of tissue, always tearing every edge before I laid it down. I then left it alone for the entire day and came back that night. Once your latex is completely cured, you can start to powder and remove it from the sculpt. I'm using baby powder because that's what I have to hand, but there's other kinds of powders you can use. I'm also using a makeup brush because that's what I had to hand, because I'm lazy. At this point, you want to basically be aggressively powdering. You want to use a lot of powder. You want every little bit of latex to be covered in powder, because latex likes to stick to itself. Latex is self-bonding. So if you have exposed raw latex and you fold the mask up onto itself, it's going to stick to itself, and then you're going to have a bad day. Especially all of these tiny little detailed areas, as soon as you start peeling that up, they're going to touch each other and then they're going to stick to each other. Once everything is completely powdered, you can brush the excess powder or just dump it out of the eye wells. Okay, yep, that's very professional. Now that the outside of the mask is completely powdered, we can start to peel up the mask. I'm tearing some of the excess tissue away, just because it's kind of in my way. Now when I say slowly peel, I mean slowly. This is in real time here, because I really want to stress to you guys how slowly and gently and carefully you want to be working on peeling this mask up. You might have noticed that as you're peeling, you've got exposed latex, so you want to be using more powder. Why did I get startled there? What was I pulled my hand back for some reason. Anyway, so you want to be aggressively powdering as you're peeling it up and exposing the raw latex. just slowly, gently rolling it up and back, not stretching, not pulling, not tearing, just slowly and gently peeling the latex up off the piece and powdering as you go, every little step of the way. Yes, I'm going to speed this up. I just really wanted to make it clear how slow you wanted to go, but here we go. Let's pick up the pace a little bit. Once you have all of your edges up, then you can start to peel off the face as well. Always powdering, especially on these detailed areas that kind of sink into the sculpt. You really want to be peeling carefully and powdering. And then the mask is a mask. Here we go. This is how it looks right now. We still need to paint. We still need to do a lot of detail work to it, but, you know, I'm pretty happy with how the latex layers came out. Okay. Okay. I'm done. Not sure what you were doing there, but okay. Get on camera. What are you doing? So now that everything is peeled off and powdered and everything, I'm cutting the edges just because they're a little rolled back and ugly and not very nice looking. As I'm cutting, I am also powdering those exposed edges, because as you cut, you are exposing latex. Always be powdering. After it's all trimmed and you're happy with it, you can place it back on the sculpt and really kind of press it into those areas very gently, just to give the mask some structural stability while you paint. I'm going in with some white acrylic paint. It's extremely cheap white acrylic paint, because it's what I had to hand. I have higher quality stuff. I didn't feel like using it. There's also other kinds of paints you can use. There's latex paints even, which might have been better because that might have bonded with the actual latex. You can even make your own latex paint by taking equal parts acrylic and latex and mixing them together very thoroughly, but I didn't feel like doing that. The next morning, the white had completely dried, and I tried it on, and I was pretty happy with it. So I started going in with some black, also very cheap black acrylic paint to give it that detailing. I'm going in very heavily with the black in all of the low areas of the sculpt, and then going back in once my brush is almost completely empty, almost dry, you could say. I'm doing a technique that's aptly called dry brushing, which is when you use a brush that's almost completely devoid of paint to very, very gently brush it along the space that you want to dry brush. And it gives it kind of this dirty or grungy kind of feeling. So I did that all along anywhere that I wanted to detail. A lot of the highlight areas, I kind of dry brushed. Anywhere with shading. Honestly, I was just going crazy with the dry brushing. I wasn't giving it too much thought. I also went in and painted the interior of the nostrils and the mouth a very heavy black, and then I also dry brushed the edges of both of those places to kind of give it this grungy, dirty effect. I pulled the dry brushing down the chin, so it was almost like it was drooling or something, just kind of rotting from its mouth. And then I actually dry brushed an expanding spiral coming out from both of the eyes, which is an effect that no one but me will ever notice. Then the painting on the mask was done. Once that was completely dry, I went in and cut out, just ignore the teeth thing there. I'll talk about that in a minute. Once everything was dry, I went in and started cutting out the nostrils and the mouth, so that I could see a little better through the nostrils and so that I could actually open that mouth. As I'm cutting, I'm also powdering those exposed edges because you don't want exposed latex. It's just going to cling to itself and then it'll be like you never cut a hole. Additionally, after I've powdered, I'm going back in with more black paint so that those edges are nice and black. A lot of times on cheap Halloween masks, you'll see that they've painted it and then cut open the mouth or whatever and have not painted the edges, and it just looks very cheap. It looks incomplete, and I didn't want that effect. I then tested out the size of my teeth and decided I didn't like them and that I wanted to make some new ones. So now I'll talk about the teeth. I had really wanted some kind of teeth element, some kind of scary teeth, as per the original sketch, but I ended up just not happy with any kind of concept that I was doing in the sculpt, so I didn't do them and decided that I would cut the mouth open and put some teeth behind it. This is literally scrap printer paper that I've sketched on with pencil and then am painting with that same cheap black acrylic paint. And then I've gone in and dry brushed some detailing on it for shading and kind of that grungy rotted teeth look. This will sit on the actor's face so that they can open their mouth. Now, we didn't end up using this for the actual shoot, it just didn't feel necessary, but I like the idea that if I were to use this mask again, I would have that as an option. Here we go. That's what it's supposed to look like. Arrgh. Cool. I became concerned about the structural stability of the mask while it was sitting on the actor's face, so I went in with some hot glue just to fill in those areas and give it just a little more structure. Now, I do not actually recommend hot glue if you want to use this mask long term, because over time the latex will peel away from the hot glue, but because we were doing the shoot that night and I was pressed for time and feeling a little anxious about it, I decided to go with hot glue just because I knew it would work and I knew it would be fast. So I'm mostly just pooling the hot glue in any of the areas that are raised on the front of the mask. From the back, it's anything that dips down. And then I went in and did kind of a crisscross lattice of glue across the kind of cones of the eyes to give those a little bit of structure too. Then took quite a while for the glue to cool, so I just sat there for a while. I could have made this part of the footage much faster, or just cut this part out, but I didn't, because I had to sit through it, and now you do too. Once the glue was completely cool and hardened, I went back in with more powder, and I powdered the glue because hot glue can be a little bit tacky, and so I didn't want anything to stick to that. So here I'm testing it out by literally taping the teeth to my face. If you're going to be doing this for more than a few seconds, make sure you are using skin-safe tape. Do not put crafting tape on your skin. This is kind of what it looks like completely done. I was having a hard time seeing because I could only see through the nostrils, but, you know, for a test, I really liked it. I then went and got my wig and my cloak to kind of see how everything was going to look together. pretty cool, I think. I'm pretty pleased with how this turned out. Finally, I stapled some elastic to either side of the mask, and I was done. And that's it. That's all there really was to it. The straps rest on the ears, and they just keep it from falling off. They don't really keep it in place. If I really wanted it to stay in place securely and really be able to use the mouth and show the teeth, then I would end up using some kind of adhesive, spirit gum or liquid latex. Maybe not liquid latex, I wouldn't want to do this, but like spirit gum or Prozade or something like that to really secure it to the face. And probably would do something with the neck and you know, the whole thing. But it was a like 8-second appearance from the monster, so I didn't really feel the need to go all out with the prosthetics. I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that it made sense, and I hope that it inspired you to maybe make your own monster mask, because it was overall only about 3 or 4 hours of work. If I had made a more complicated sculpt, or if I had gone further with the concepts and really pushed the elements further, then it would have taken longer. But it was a very easy, it's a very simple design, very simple sculpt. So it was not hard to not hard to get it done quickly. So I hope that you will go out and do your own creepy monster face, knowing that it can be done pretty easily and pretty quickly, as long as you have the right materials, I guess. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed TNR, and I hope that this behind-the-scenes glance into making my monster was entertaining, at least. Thank you. Bye.